Hello and welcome back to my vlog. Tea Leaves by Francis S. Drake, Part 21. It became, says Honorable Robert C. Winthrop, a simple question which should go under British tea or American liberty. That volunteer band of Liberty Boys performed their work better than they knew, averting contingencies which must have caused immediate bloodshed and accomplishing results of the greatest importance to the American cause. William C. Rives, in his Life of James Madison, says, "This memorable occurrence was undoubtedly, in the immediate sequence of the events which it produced, the proximate cause of the American Revolution." A Tory pamphleteer of the time gives us the loyalist view of the affair. He says, "Now the crime of the Bostonians was a compound of the grossest injury and insult. It was an act of the highest insolence towards government, such as mildness itself cannot overlook or forgive. The injustice of the deed was also most atrocious, as it was the destruction of property to a vast amount, when it was known that the nation was obliged to in honor to protect it." We subjoin some of the comments of candid British writers respecting the affair. Mr. Massey says, "The question of taxation was virtually settled by this signal failure to enforce the law, or rather by the absence of any attempt to protect the property of merchants who had made their ventures by the express authority, if not at the instance of the British government." While speaking of the destruction of the tea as the crowning outrage, Lecky says, "It will probably strike the reader that every argument which showed that the tea duty was not a grievance was equally powerful to show that it was perfectly useless as a means of obtaining a revenue. It would be difficult indeed to find a more curious instance of legislative incapacity than the whole transaction displayed." Here Carlyle. Thursday, December 16, 1773. What a contention is going on far overseas at Boston, New England. The case is well known and still memorable to mankind. British Parliament, after 9 years of the saddest haggling and baffling to and fro under constitutional stress of weather and such east winds and west winds of parliamentary eloquence as seldom were, has made up its mind that America shall pay duty on their teas before infusing them. In America, Boston more especially, is tacitly determined that it will not, and that to avoid mistakes the teas shall never be landed at all. Roch's report done, the chairman, and Adams' American Cato, subsequently so called, dissolves the sorrowful 7,000 with these words: "The meeting declares it can do nothing more to save the country. We'll naturally go home then and weep. Hark, however, almost on the instant, in front of the Old South Meeting House, a terrific war whoop, and about 50 Mohawk Indians, with whom Adams seems to be acquainted and speaks without interpreter. Aha!" And sure enough, before the stroke of 7, these 50 painted Mohawks are forward without noise to Griffin's Wharf, have put sentries all around them, and in a great silence of the neighborhood are busy in 3 gangs upon the dormant tea ships, opening their chests and punctually shaking them out into the sea. Listening from the distance, you could hear distinctly the ripping open of the chests and no other sound. About 10 p.m. all was finished. The Mohawks gone like a dream, and Boston sleeping more silently even than usual. In England, the news of the destruction of the tea at Boston was received with astonishment, not unmixed with anger. Men of all parties were swept into the hostile current. Coercive measures were at once brought forward in Parliament. In the debates that ensued, a member said, "The town of Boston ought to be knocked about their ears and destroyed." Moderate and judicious men made a gallant stand against the bill shutting up the port of Boston, but the current was irresistible, and the measure, with others of like character, passed by overwhelming votes. Burke, on the question of the repeal of the tea tax, made one of his noblest efforts. Colonel Barre told the House that if they would keep their hands out of the pockets of the Americans, they would be obedient subjects. John Stone, formerly governor of Florida, who had before predicted to the East India Company that exporting tea on their own account was absurd and would end in loss, now predicted that the port bill would, if passed, be productive of a general confederacy to resist the power of Britain and end in a general revolt. His utterances were prophetic indeed. These measures did unite the colonies and produced a general revolt ending in American independence. Accounts vary greatly as to the number and appearance of the Tea Party, the original body which arrived so opportunely at the door of the Old South, and which may have included Molyneux, Revere, and the more prominent leaders, was probably not numerous. They, however, had passed the word, and trusty coadjutors were not long in following them. Colonel Tudor and Colonel Stevens say they were not disguised, but all other accounts state that they were in the Indian dress or something resembling it. The historian Gordon places their number at 17, though judged to be many more as they ran across Fort Hill. Our number was between 28 and 30, says Wyeth, one of the party. Hutchinson says about 50. And many have since adopted his statement. Tudor, in his Life of Otis, says 70 or 80. Colonel Ebenezer Stevens agrees with him. None put the number lower than 60 nor higher than 80, is the recollection of a Bostonian 50 years after the event. John Andrews was told that they mustered on Fort Hill to the number of about 200. From 100 to 150 being more or less actively engaged, thought Hughes, one of the actors, 200 or 300 dressed like Indians, wrote Dr. Cooper to Dr. Franklin. There seems to be a lot of confusion of how many there were and whether or not they were dressed like Indians, or if they were, how many were dressed like Indians. I thought we might find more out about that through this, but we'll see. There's more to come. Make it a great day, and bye for now.